My name is Rita. As I sat in my office, the city skyline sprawling before me through the floor-to-the-ceiling windows, I was still seething with anger. My phone was buzzing non-stop, but I ignored it. Emails from unknown numbers filled my inbox, and I could guess who they were from. I'd just sent a scathing email to Charles and Victoria Thompson, my ex-in-laws, and I knew they wouldn't be happy. I remembered vividly the day they'd thrown me out of their palatial mansion. The heavy oak doors had slammed shut behind me, the sound echoing like a death knell in my ears. Victoria stood on the marble steps, her Gucci shawl fluttering in the wind. Her eyes were filled with pure disgust as she looked down at me. "Poor girls have no place in our family, Rita," she sneered. "I don't know what lies Henry sold you, but this farce ends now. Take your ragged little bag and go back to wherever you came from." I stood in the long, circular driveway, the cold rain soaking through my coat. I looked up towards the second-floor window, and there was Henry, my husband of 3 years, peeking out from behind the curtains. He didn't come down. He didn't defend me. He just watched as his parents treated me like garbage. Henry is a high-ranking manager at a well-known multinational corporation, Victoria continued, gesturing flamboyantly. He'll be the director within the next 5 years. He needs a wife who fits his status, not some nobody. "What was your job again?" "A clerk?" "I'm in top management," I replied calmly, but she just waved me off. "Same thing. Henry deserves a woman from our social circle, someone with good upbringing, class, and a big inheritance. Not someone who had to rely on student loans." She hissed the last words as if they were venom. Charles emerged from the house, checking his Patek Philippe watch. "The car will take you to the subway. Consider yourself lucky we're not making you walk. And don't even think about contacting Henry. Our lawyers will handle the divorce. We'll be generous and give you a few $1,000s to disappear quietly." I picked up my bag, the one Victoria had called ragged, but it was actually a designer piece I'd bought with my own hard-earned money. I walked towards the waiting car. Before getting in, I turned back and said, "You know what's ironic? You have no idea who I really am, or who your son really is." Victoria let out a shrill laugh. "Oh, we know exactly who you are. A nobody. And we know our son is destined for great things." I just smiled faintly. "We'll see about that." The drive to the subway was silent. But I didn't take the subway. I called my driver and had him pick me up in my luxury car. Charles and Victoria Thompson had no clue that their son's so-called nobody wife was actually Rita Evans, the founder and CEO of StarTech Solutions, one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the nation. I'd met Henry at a charity art auction 2 years ago. He was charming, funny, and refreshingly unaware of my identity. I'd worn a simple black evening dress straight from the office, and he'd assumed I was someone's guest. When he'd asked what I did, I'd simply said, "I work in tech," and left it at that. Our romance had been a whirlwind. Henry had swept me off my feet with his confidence, his tales of his high-flying job, and his family's influence. He always insisted on paying for everything, playing the role of the successful executive taking care of his less fortunate girlfriend. At first, I'd found it endearing, thinking it was just a part of his male pride. We'd gotten married in a small, private ceremony. Henry had said he preferred it that way, but I later suspected he was embarrassed by my supposed lack of connections. I'd kept my maiden name for business reasons, which his parents had misinterpreted as a sign of my unsuitable background. I'd truly fallen in love with Henry. Despite his pretenses and his desire to seem successful, there was a vulnerable side to him that touched me. I'd hoped that once we were married, I could gradually reveal my true identity and help him become the man he pretended to be. But then came the family gatherings. Victoria would make snide remarks about my clothes, although mine cost far more than her entire outfit. She was too superficial to recognize quality without a well-known brand label. She'd constantly mock my family, hard-working folks who'd built a small but successful local business from scratch. And they'd always suggest that I quit my little job and focus on being a proper Thompson wife. Henry would just sit there silently, sometimes nodding in agreement with his parents. Eventually, he even started joining in, suggesting I take charm classes, hire a personal stylist, and learn to play tennis at the exclusive club. I'd tried to tell him the truth several times. But whenever I brought up my job, he'd interrupt me with his stories about his important meetings, his big deals, and his impressive colleagues. He painted such a vivid picture of his corporate success that I began to doubt myself. That was until last month. I decided to surprise him at his office. StarTech Solutions occupied 5 floors of a modern downtown skyscraper. My assistant had cleared my schedule, and I thought it would be romantic to take my husband out for lunch. When I asked the receptionist to call up to Henry Thompson's office on the executive floor, she looked confused. "I'm sorry, we don't have a Henry Thompson on the executive floor." I asked her to check again, saying he was in strategic planning. She typed on her computer and then frowned. "Oh, I see. Henry Thompson. He's in the maintenance department. Basement level." My heart sank. It wasn't because he was a maintenance worker. There's no shame in honest work. It was the lies, the elaborate and needless lies. I went down to the basement. There he was, in a blue uniform, pushing a cleaning cart. He looked up, saw me, and his face turned as white as a sheet. "Rita? What are you doing here?" He stammered. "I work here," I said simply. "For the past 8 years. The truth came pouring out. He'd lost his executive job 4 years ago. His parents didn't know and couldn't know because they'd cut him off financially if they found out. He'd been desperately looking for another high-profile position while working as a maintenance worker to pay his bills. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. "Because you thought I was successful. You'd never love a failure," he said. "Henry, I fell in love with you, not your job title," I told him. But he couldn't accept it. The shame was too deep, and his fear of his parents was too strong. He begged me not to tell anyone, and I agreed, thinking we could work through it together. But then came that fateful day when they ejected me from their house. I remembered sitting in my office, pulling up Henry's employment file. He'd had perfect attendance for 3 years. His supervisor had given him good reviews, highlighting his positive attitude and strong work ethic. Under normal circumstances, I would have promoted him. My phone buzzed with missed calls from Henry. Text messages filled my screen, starting from confusion and quickly turning into panic. "Rita, where are you? Why aren't you at the subway? My parents said you left in a different car. Please call me back. I'm sorry I didn't come down. I wanted to, but they would have suspected something. Rita, please. Why isn't your phone answering? I went to your apartment. The doorman says you don't live there. He says the penthouse belongs to someone named R. Evans? I don't understand what's going on. Please answer me." I ignored all his messages. Instead, I called my HR manager. "Amanda, I need you to pull Henry Thompson's employment file." "Yes, I need everything, including his emergency contact information." While waiting for the file, I reflected on the past 3 years. I'd sneaked around his parents. We'd kept separate finances because Henry wanted to maintain his so-called independence. I'd kept a small apartment because he'd said his parents would judge our home. I'd hidden my designer clothes and worn more ordinary ones to avoid questions. I'd dimmed my light so that his false image could shine brighter. Amanda knocked on the door and entered with the file. "Is there a problem with this employee?" she asked. "No," I said, scanning the emergency contact details. "He's actually been an excellent maintenance worker. I'm thinking of promoting him." She looked surprised but nodded. "To a maintenance supervisor?" "Something like that," I replied. After she left, I composed an email to Charles and Victoria. I attached Henry's complete employment record, including 3 years' worth of time cards, work schedules, performance reviews, and pay stubs showing his hourly wage. I also included photos of our corporate events where Henry was in his maintenance uniform in the background while I gave keynote speeches. There was also security footage of him entering through the service entrance every morning at 5 a.m. and his ID photo with the maintenance team clearly visible. The subject line read, "Regarding your son's remarkable career." The email was straightforward. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, I thought you should know the truth about your son's position at our company. Henry has been a valuable member of our maintenance staff for 3 years. There's no shame in honest work, but considering your strong views on people from humble backgrounds not belonging in your family, I thought you should be aware of the reality. Also, I'd like to clarify my own position. I'm not a clerk. I'm the founder and CEO of StarTech Solutions. My net worth surpassed your family's assets about 5 years ago. I'm not boasting, I just want to correct your misconception that I married your son for money or status. I married Henry because I loved him. I kept my identity a secret because he seemed to need to feel successful. I endured your insults and snobbishness, hoping we'd find a way to bridge the gap. But watching him stand silent while you threw me out of your house for being poor made me realize the real problem. The issue isn't that Henry is a maintenance worker. The problem is that he's a coward, and he learned that from you. I'll be filing for divorce as you suggested. However, I suspect Henry will need that generous settlement more than I will. Best regards, Rita Evans, CEO of StarTech Solutions. P.S. Henry is a good worker. I'm promoting him to maintenance supervisor. He'll need the raise for his new apartment, as I'm sure you'll kick him out once you find out he's been lying to you for 4 years. I hit send and then called my lawyer. Tom, I need you to prepare divorce papers. Yes, the prenuptial agreement is airtight. He'll only get what he earned as a maintenance worker during our marriage, about $120,000 in total. Yes, I'm certain. My phone went crazy with calls from Henry, Charles, Victoria, and unknown numbers that were probably their lawyers. I ignored them all and went back to work. I had a company to run. It was only in the evening, as I sat in my real penthouse apartment, that I allowed myself to feel the full impact of what had happened. It wasn't the divorce, that was just paperwork. It was the betrayal. I realized that Henry had never truly loved me. He only loved the idea of having someone beneath him, someone who made him feel successful by comparison. My assistant forwarded me a message from the building security. The Thompsons had shown up at StarTech Solutions, demanding to see me. They'd been escorted out, but not before Victoria had caused a huge scene in the lobby, screaming about lawsuits and fraud and how I'd tricked her precious son. Henry had been suspended pending an investigation into whether he'd misused his access to the building. Security footage showed him trying to access the executive floors with his maintenance pass multiple times in the past month, probably trying to confirm if I really worked there. I felt a twinge of pity for him. He'd built such an elaborate web of lies, all for what? His parents' approval? Their money? Their idea of success? A text came through from an unknown number. I almost deleted it, but something made me read it. This is Henry, using a co-worker's phone. I know you probably won't believe me, but I did love you. I just loved the idea of being important more. I'm sorry. I'm moving back to Texas, starting over. Maybe this time I'll be honest about who I am. Thank you for the promotion. I don't deserve it, but I'll try to earn it. Take care, Rita. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I deleted it and blocked the number. 3 months later, the divorce was finalized. Henry had moved away, his parents had retreated to their mansion, and I'd returned to my real life. At a tech conference in Los Angeles, a young woman approached me after my keynote speech. Ms. Evans, I just wanted to say thank you. I've been hiding my success from my boyfriend because he feels threatened by it. But hearing your story in the news, it made me realize I shouldn't have to dim my light for someone else's ego. I smiled at her. You're absolutely right. Never let anyone make you feel small. You deserve to shine. She walked away, and I turned back to the crowd of entrepreneurs and innovators waiting to meet me. This was my world, a world where success was celebrated, and people were valued for their achievements, not for their ability to deceive. Victoria Thompson had been wrong about one thing. Girls from humble beginnings did belong in her family because her precious son was one of them. The only difference was that I'd built my fortune through hard work and innovation, while all Henry had built was a castle of lies. And in the end, that castle had crumbled, taking everyone in it down with it, except for the girl who'd had the courage to love him for who he truly was.